And hello everyone, welcome back to another Tkinter tutorial. So today we will be talking about frames. So you can think of a frame as a section within your application. So you have your app window, but you know you can only use either packing or gridding. Now what a frame allows you to do is to grid within a pack or pack within a grid, and it just allows you to make your entire application more modular. Now this may all be sounding like Chinese to you, but don't worry, we'll be getting into that. So first let's set up a title, root.title. We did this in the previous video, and here we can just set a title and we can call it My App Frames or something like that, something nice. And then we can create a frame, or let's first put a label on the screen. So label, we put it on root, and the text is equal to hello world, and then we just .pack it. So now this label is going to be on the screen. If we run this, then there we go, hello world, and it's just been packed there. Now if we want to add another label, we'll have to pack it because we cannot grid it. So if I say hello 2 or hello 22, run it, we get hello 22 underneath it. But if we try to grid this and we add a row, let's say 0, and a column is equal to 0 as well, save that and we run this, then we get an error because you cannot mix a grid and a packing system. But you'll also notice here on my recorder, this probably wasn't made with Tkinter, but you can still see how this could be useful. Here, there may have been packing instead of gridding. So these two, they were packed. Then here we may have gridded. Or this section here, that may be grid. And this here may also be grid, but this may be packing. Just an example. Now, how would we go about actually doing that? Well, we usually just go and grid everything, but in this case, there's a way around it. So let's create our first frame. So frame, I'm just going to call it frm, is equal to, or let's just call it, give it frm for frame, and then give it something to kind of remember it by. Maybe 1. I'm just going to say 1 because I have no idea what to put there. But anyway, then we can say label frame, because a frame is basically kind of a mix between a label and it is basically like a box label. It's very interesting. And we'll see why in a second. We're going to attach that to root. And we're going to say text. And this is going to be like the title of the frame. You don't need to have text there. It's optional. But here we can maybe say something like important buttons. And maybe we can give it some pad y, which will give it padding on the y's angle. And we can make that maybe something like 10. And pad x and make that something like 10 as well. So there's nice padding inside of it and whatnot. Now let's actually put something inside of this. We can say, I'm going to call this frm1 btn1. There's a very crappy naming convention I have here, but this is just an example to kind of keep it simple, because this button is going to be in the frame. Then you can call that button, and that button will not be attached to root. This button will be attached to frm1, because we don't want the button to be on root. We want the button to be on the frame because it should be inside of that. And also we forgot to pack the frame here, so let's go frm1.pack. Now here we can say text is equal to this is on a frame, to kind of specify this is on a frame. And we can say, and I'm just going to copy this part because that's a lot to type, dot grid. I'm going to say grid, or let's first start with packing, pack. And then I'm going to create another button here. And this will be button 2. and it's also going to be on frame 1, and this is going to just say button 2. If we save and run this, then here we have a little thing going on here. So let me just, there. So we have our hello world, and then here we have our important buttons, and then there are 2 buttons on here, and it has a nice little border around it. Now let's actually see what we can do here. Let's grid this. Let's see if we can grid it. If we can, then that would be amazing, right? So let's say grid, and in here we can say row is equal to 0 and column is equal to 0 as well. And then I'm going to keep that on row 0, but this is going to be on column 1. Now remember, previously when we tried to grid something, it broke the entire application. But now there are 2 things gridded next to each other. So that's what makes framing so powerful, is now we have 2 buttons that's gridded inside of an app that has a pack layout. So that is basically the basics of frames. There's probably more things you can do with frames, but I believe that's enough to at least get you through the basics. You know, you can now have frames on your application, which will allow you to put your things on it in packing as well as in gridding order. And take note, you can probably have a frame within another frame here, and this will just be like its own hierarchy where root, so frame 1 is attached to root, but the buttons on here is attached to frame 1. It's not attached to root, because frame 1 is kind of like you have a big frame, and that's called root, and then on the then you can put a frame onto root, and that frame is then what is here. So then it's like its own little window within your window. And yeah, that's the basics. Thank you for watching. I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you all again in the next tutorial.